I announced my presence, my voice barely cutting through the pulsating lights and the bass vibrations that filled the corporate party. The atmosphere was electric, a surreal backdrop for the gathering of smartly dressed executives and their partners. Everyone was dressed to impress. Laughter intermingled with the clinking of glasses as I stood there, a bit hesitant. I wasn't part of this world. I was only there to support my wife, Anna, a senior marketing executive. Leaning against the bar, holding a glass of whiskey, I was approached by a jovial man in his early 30s. He had a relaxed smile that sharply contrasted with the serious conversations about quarterly reports I had overheard earlier. "Great party, right?" he said, scanning the room as if searching for someone specific. "The company really doesn't hold back." "Impressive," I replied, taking a sip of my drink and trying to match his enthusiasm, even though I felt out of place. Derek leaned in, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "You know, it's at parties like these where the really exciting stuff happens, beyond the dancing and drinking." My curiosity was despite myself. "How so?" I asked, genuinely interested. He laughed, swirling his glass. "Let's just say the taste of forbidden fruit is a hobby for some of us here." "Ah, forbidden fruit," I repeated, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. "Yeah," Derek continued, oblivious to my growing unease. "I'm seeing someone from here. It's a secret, you know. Keeping things hidden really adds to the thrill. She's married, too. It makes everything even more intense." His casual tone struck me. I felt a need to know more. "Seems risky. Who is she?" He hesitated, a sly smile playing on his lips. "Well, I probably shouldn't say, but what the hell? You don't know her. It's Anna Rivers." The name echoed in my mind like a gunshot, shattering the facade of my reality. Anna, my wife, the person I trusted most in the world. My vision blurred for a moment, and I gripped my glass, trying to process the revelation. Derek, misinterpreting my shock as amusement, clapped me on the shoulder. "Crazy, right? How we can hide it all." I forced a smile, my thoughts racing. "Yeah, crazy." The rest of the night passed in a haze. I excused myself, citing a sudden migraine, needing to escape the noise of people, especially Derek's unwitting confession. As I drove home alone, the night's revelations swirled in my head. Anna's late nights at the office, her unexplained absences, her secretive behavior with her phone. All the pieces of a cruel puzzle were falling into place. Sitting in the dark silence of our bedroom, I decided that Derek's casual infidelity would not be met with despair but with action. Anna had broken our vows, and I would make sure she faced the consequences. A plan began to form in my mind, a plan that would end in a final severing of all ties, ensuring that Anna and I would never cross paths again. I started with her phone, knowing it was risky as she could wake up at any moment. My hands trembled as I typed in the passcode. Our anniversary date, now a cruel irony. I went straight to the messages, where a conversation under the name, PM Work, had exchanges between her and Derek. They were cautious using coded language, but the intent was clear. "Can barely wait for our next rendezvous. Last time was explosive," read one of Derek's messages. "Agreed, we need to be careful, but it's worth the risk," Anna replied. I took screenshots. The first pieces of evidence were secured. Then I installed a GPS tracker on her car while she was taking a shower. I went to the garage and placed it in an inconspicuous spot under the rear bumper. If she was meeting Derek, I would know when and where. The day passed in a blur. I acted like a devoted husband, but inside, a cold fury had set in. When Anna left for a work event that evening, I didn't follow her immediately. Instead, I waited, giving her enough rope to entangle herself. At home, I set up my laptop with the GPS tracker software open and updating in real time. It showed her car parked at a swanky hotel downtown. Definitely not a place where a work event would be held. My heart raced as I grabbed my camera, needing photographic evidence for the impending exposure, whatever it took. When I arrived at the hotel, the crowd provided the perfect cover. I found a spot across the street, my lens trained on the main entrance. After an hour, Anna and Derek emerged, laughing, his arm casually draped around her waist. I took several shots, the sound of the shutter echoing in my head like a judge's gavel sealing their fate. They said their goodbyes at the entrance of the hotel, and in that moment, I made a decision. Confronting Derek now was not part of the plan, but emotions took over. I needed to know more. It was no longer just about my marriage, it was about facing the truth with a determination that fortified my courage. "Derek," I called out, my voice firm. He turned surprised, but his smile vanished when he saw the intensity on my face. "Who are you?" he asked, feigning ignorance. "I think you know very well who I am," I replied firmly with a slight threat in my voice. "I'm Anna's husband, and I know everything." His mouth opened and closed as if he were gasping for air, caught off guard by my sudden confrontation. "Listen, I didn't." He started, but I cut him off, approaching him, my voice dropping to a growl. "You end this, or I will end it in a way you can't even dream of. This is your only warning." I didn't wait for his response. I turned and left, leaving him stunned, watching me with disbelief as I drove home. The adrenaline from the confrontation began to fade, replaced by a feeling of emptiness in my stomach. There was no turning back. Anna's betrayal would not go unanswered, and my plan was just beginning. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the room, I sat on the couch, printed photos and screenshots laid out before me like a confession. Each piece of evidence was undeniable, a reminder of the trust she had shattered. The images and messages were like blows to my heart, revealing the reality of what had happened between Anna and Derek. The sound of Anna's key turning in the lock signaled her return, and my heart beat faster, a mix of dread and anger growing within me. She entered the house, her face cheerful, but it faltered when she saw my serious expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice full of a concern that now seemed almost mocking. "We need to talk," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady despite the inner chaos. I gestured for her to sit in the armchair opposite me. As she settled, I pushed the pile of evidence across the coffee table towards her. Anna looked down, her eyes widening as she realized the contents. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "You tell me," I responded, crossing my arms and watching her reaction closely. She picked up a photo, her fingers trembling slightly as she examined it. "It's not what it looks like," she began, her voice shaky. "I think it is exactly what it looks like," I interrupted sharply. "You and Derek, the hotel meetings, the secret messages. How long has this been going on, Anna?" She was silent for what seemed like an eternity, her face drained of all color. "Months," she finally whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "It was a mistake, I'm so sorry." My voice rose, incredulous. "You made a conscious decision to betray our marriage repeatedly." "That is not a mistake, it is a decision." Anna's eyes glistened with tears, but I felt no pity, only a cold resolve. "I don't understand how you could do this to us," I said, my voice cracking despite my firmness. "I don't know either," she pleaded, her hands clasped in her lap as if seeking solace. "It was stupid, it just happened." "It didn't just happen," I retorted, the pain breaking through. "You made it happen. I trusted you, Anna, and you broke that trust. I know, and I regret it every day. Please, can we try to fix this?" Her voice was desperate, seeking redemption. I shook my head, my decision firm. "It's over, Anna. I can't look at you without seeing the lies." "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice now a whisper, full of fear. "I want a divorce," I stated clearly. "And I want you to move out tomorrow." Anna's body shook with sobs, the weight of her pain evident in her posture, but my heart had hardened against her. The betrayal was too deep, the wound still too fresh. "I'll stay at a hotel tonight," she finally said, rising with difficulty, her face distorted with sorrow. The finality of my decision hung in the air, a bitter end to the life we had built together. The next day, as she walked towards the door, her steps were hesitant. A part of me felt an intense desire to call her back, to say something that could mitigate the chasm that had opened between us, but I chose silence. The cold that had enveloped me was unbearable. As soon as she left, the house seemed oppressively quiet. The life we had built together was collapsing, destroyed by lies. I looked around, and clarity began to emerge. I had made my decision, my resolve was firm. It was the end of our chapter together, but also the beginning of a new life, free from the shadows of betrayal. The silence in the house sharply contrasted with the storm raging within me as I meticulously planned the final steps of my revenge. The betrayal had been exposed, and with it, my resolve had turned into something cold and relentless. Anna's betrayal had not only destroyed our marriage but also awakened a dark side in me, craving retribution. Several days had passed since Anna moved out, and the time alone gave me the perfect opportunity to plan a scheme to ensure her downfall, along with Derek's, would be as public as it was devastating. I began by anonymously sending the evidence of their affair to the Human Resources Department of the company where she worked. The scandal involving a senior executive and a subordinate threatened to destroy the professional reputations they both valued. But this was only the beginning of my carefully planned revenge. I waited for the company's annual gala, a prestigious event attended by everyone in Anna's professional circle. That night, dressed impeccably, I entered the hall with a cold calm. A digital copy of the evidence of their affair was securely stored on a flash drive in my pocket. The gala was in full swing, filled with laughter and music. I spotted Anna and Derek in a corner of the room, clearly ostracized by colleagues. The sight of them together fueled my resolve. I approached the audiovisual technician, pretending to be an assistant to the company's public relations team. I handed him the flash drive lying deftly. "I have something that needs to be shown during the presentation." "It came from the top," I said. The technician nodded, not questioning my authority. When the lights dimmed for the presentation, I stood at the back of the room, my heart pounding with grim anticipation. The first slides showed stocks and company growth charts. But then, suddenly, the screen changed. Intimate and undeniable photos of Anna and Derek filled the screen. The sound of gasps echoed through the room, and I saw Anna's face pale. She froze, her eyes wide with horror. Derek looked around, his career collapsing before the industry leaders who once admired him. Before the chaos intensified, I slipped out, feeling a cold satisfaction. My revenge was not only personal, it was complete. Their professional lives were ruined, as were the trust and vows that once bound us. But there was one last step in my plan. Later that night, as the city settled into silence, I drove to Derek's house, knowing he would be alone, Anna too embarrassed to face anyone. I waited in the darkness, patience pulsing through me. When he finally appeared, his steps were slow and hesitant. I emerged from the shadows, confronting him one last time. "Everything you valued is now destroyed, as is the life I led with Anna. Was it worth it?" I asked, my voice quiet and menacing. Derek stepped back, fear evident in his eyes. "Please, I didn't mean for this to happen," he pleaded. "You made that choice," I replied simply. With a swift motion, I smashed the windows of his car with a heavy object, the sound of shattering glass cutting through the silence of the night. Derek didn't try to stop me, he was broken, destroyed. Leaving him in his misery, I didn't look back. The completion of my actions marked the beginning of a new path, free from the shackles of betrayal. Anna and Derek would always remember that night, the night their betrayal cost them everything. As for me, I was finally free, the chains of betrayal broken by my own hands of retribution. Updated, the silent confrontation. While the flash drive did its work on the screens at the gala, I watched as Anna and Derek were exposed before their colleagues. The reactions around me ranged from shock to outrage. A silent justice permeated the air, but only I knew its source. Seeing Anna's face, pale, lost, as her image with Derek unfolded on the screen, brought a cold bitterness to my chest. The burden of shattered trust was impossible to ignore. As I left the event, I knew that night marked our end, but also the beginning of my life, free from the shadows of lies. Update 2, the final act of retribution. Later that same night, I waited for Derek at the entrance to his house. Memories of my life with Anna mixed with the cold of the pre-dawn twilight. When he finally appeared, his face was exhausted, his voice trembling and defeated, and his expression was full of pure fear. "Was it worth it?" I asked, looking him straight in the eye. Derek tried to stammer a response, but there were no more excuses or arguments that could erase what they had done. As I walked away, I felt a strange sense of freedom. For Anna and Derek, every consequence had been realized. For me, a new stage was beginning, a stage of rebirth and healing. Recently, there has been a buzz surrounding a potential scandal at the company. While the details are still under wraps, the anticipation and speculation have added an extra layer of tension to an already dramatic situation. This new development, coupled with the recent announcement of a major corporate merger in the tech industry, has everyone on edge. The merger, which is set to close in the coming months, is expected to create significant shifts in the market, potentially affecting the positions of many high-level executives. The timing couldn't be worse for those already under scrutiny.